Welcome to this tutorial on how to projection map a cake. If you've projection mapped before, then some of this might be a little tedious for you because I really will be starting with the basics and giving a lot of detail about all aspects of this process. You may have seen Luma Bakery's videos on this channel. If you haven't, check them out. I've offered this service professionally for over 2 years, but I'm now moving away from this and focusing more on teaching others how to achieve this technique and building a cake mapping community and creating different, more creative cake mapping projects for others to try themselves. This tutorial will use free software called MapMap. In the past, when I've cake mapped on commercial projects, I've used QLab and MapMapper, but these are paid for pieces of software, so if you're trying this for the first time, you're playing around, or you're doing a one-off project, maybe you've borrowed a projector, you might not want to pay for software. If you'd be interested in learning about my QLab MapMapper workflow and also using multiple projectors, let me know in the comments section and I can put together a tutorial. In the description, I've included a link to some resources you can download for free, which includes a MapMap scene that's already been set up. You just need to map it to your specific cake. That's if you don't want to go through these steps yourself, although I'd recommend that you do give it a try. I've also included the video content, which you are free to use for your personal projects. I've also listed all the hardware and equipment I'm using, including the make and model of the projector down below. In order to successfully cake map, you're obviously going to need a cake. Mine was made for me by a professional baker. You might want to get a professional to make yours. If you wanted to create a full dummy version yourself, you're going to need styrofoam dummies covered in white fondant icing. Links to these materials are below. The cake I've always worked with has 5 tiers, all 5 inches high, starting with an 8-inch square base at the top, then getting larger by 2-inch increments as you go down, so 10 inches, 12 inches, 14 inches with 16 inches at the bottom. These are the dimensions that are going to work with the content I've provided here, or a version that you scale proportionally with these ratios. You might also just want to project onto 3 or 4 tiers, that would work too. A few things to note are that even though they are polystyrene inside, they are very heavy, especially the largest one, so transporting them and moving them around can be tricky. They do keep. I've had these for 2.5 years now, but they are really showing their age with some marks and discoloration, and I'd consider these well past being acceptable for a paying job. One thing I found is that the icing sweats over time. Another baker has recommended a type of fondant icing that is designed for tropical temperatures and would be more resistant to this problem in the long run. I've put the link to that icing down below. For commercial jobs, weddings for example, where the couple want to cut the cake, at least one tier has to be real. To keep things simple for me and most cost effective for the client, I would tend to offer the top 8-inch tier as real cake and the remaining 4 tiers as dummies, and then provide however many slices of cupcake were needed to make up the numbers beyond what you get from the top tier, which is about 35 to 40 wedding portions or 16 dessert portions. You'll find that the edges and corners of real cake are softer and you won't have as crisp lines to work with as you do on the dummies, which is another reason to use fake cake where possible. The projector I'm using is a short throw 2200 lumen projector by BenQ. It's been discontinued now and superseded by another model which I've linked to below. I really like this projector and it served me really well. One thing I really like is that it has a 6-speed color wheel which reduces the rainbow effect you get with some projectors and produces really rich, bright colors. Like I said, it has a short throw lens, which is what I wanted for the setup I was going for. That means it can be much closer to the projected surface than a typical projector you might use for a home cinema. You maintain a lot of brightness by projecting from close range, and it's harder for people to get in the way of the projections if you're setting the projector up on a tabletop, not rigging it overhead on a truss, for example. I personally wasn't interested in using trusses because they're more of a challenge logistically, and I think they can sometimes be unsightly and imposing on a space. There are some disadvantages though to projecting from close quarters rather than from overhead, such as the risk of the audience knocking the projectors, so you'll have to decide what works best for you. I want to talk briefly about the image asset I've provided called numbered UV. This is something that's going to help us during the mapping phase. It might look confusing at first, and this is a more sophisticated approach than is actually needed, but I believe it's good practice to get the most out of your projector and make your projections look the best they can be. The reason it's set up like this is to maximize the number of pixels we're utilizing within the projector's resolution. My projector is Full HD, also known as 1080p, which means it has a resolution of 1920 by 1080 pixels. I want to put as many of those pixels to work by splitting apart the tiers and packing them as efficiently as possible within the 1920 by 1080 space. If you're confused, it will become clearer in a moment. The tiers are numbered 1 to 5, with 1 at the top and 5 at the bottom to help you know which section of content is going on which surface of the cake. Time to set up the projector. You can mount the projector on a tripod or just sit it on a table. I use a freestanding plinth I built myself for this purpose. You want to set up the projector far enough away so that projected light covers the cake from top to bottom, but near enough again so as to take advantage of all the pixels the projector has to offer. As for how far away to set up the projector from the cake, you can work this out by trial and error by moving the projector nearer and further away. Or if you're not afraid of a bit of maths, look at your projector's specification and find out its throw ratio. This number represents the distance of the projector from the surface divided by the width of the projected image in meters. The smaller the throw ratio number, the closer your projector can be to the cake. For example, as I said, my projector has a short throw lens and its throw ratio is 0.69 to 0.83. It has a range because its lens has an optical zoom, though many lenses are fixed, so you'll only have one number to work with. To work this through with my own projector as an example, I'll take the smaller number, and I know that that equals the minimum distance the projector can be from the cake divided by the width of the projected image. Now I have 5 tiers, each 5 inches high, so the cake has a total height of 25 inches or 0.635 meters. I also know that the aspect ratio of the projector is 16 to 9. That's a ratio of the output's width to its height. That means for every 16 pixels a video has in width, there are 9 pixels in height. If you're still with me, for a piece of video content 0.635 meters high, like ours needs to be, it will be 1.13 meters wide. To get the distance between the cake and my projector, I plug this into the equation, and I discover that I can project from 0.78 meters from the cake. Trial and error is obviously less complicated and fine for most people, but sometimes you can't scout out an event location beforehand, or you don't have lots of setup time on the day, and it's good to plan ahead and know how long your cables need to be, for example. Some projectors can be turned on their side and project in portrait mode. This would actually be better for us because our cake is taller than it is wide. However, my projector isn't designed to do this, so I've kept it landscape. Plug your projector into a power source and turn it on. Connect it to your laptop or computer. I'm using a MacBook Pro, specifications below, which is powerful enough even for heavy content and outputting to multiple projectors. I'm using a mini display port to HDMI cable, which goes in the back of the projector in HDMI slot 1. It's useful to turn off any lights and reduce ambient light at this point so you can see the projection better now that it's time to start mapping. The first thing to mention is that I will be working on a Mac, so some of these steps, especially when setting up the projector in your display, might be a little bit different for you if you're working on a PC, for example. But if you are on a Mac, you want to come down here into System Preferences and go to Displays. I can already see my projector here, it is, BenQ, and I want to make sure it's optimized for it and not my laptop's display. In Arrangement, I want Mirror Displays turned on. In the documentation for MapMap, it actually says that it doesn't want mirror displays on, but I found that actually this is the way to make it work. So, opening up MapMap, and this is what we see, not very much. And the first thing that I want you to do is to come up here into the top left and click on this little piece of film, import a video or image file, and I want you to bring 2 things in. The first thing is this numbered UV image that we've talked about before. Here it is now sitting in your library. And the second thing is the video we actually want to put onto the cake. So cake mapping projected content, and there they both are in your library, but you don't see anything in either of your editors yet until you press add mesh layer here, this plus on top of a rectangle. So here's the particle cascade that we're going to be putting on a cake. You can pause and play it over here in the top right. And here in the inspector we see its source is the projected content. If we change that to numbered UV, then we see this instead. If you haven't done any mapping at all before, then the basic idea really is to use this bounding box to isolate sections of the video so that we can manipulate just that section onto an individual surface separate from the other portions of the video. Just by moving these corner handles around, you can see we're manipulating the output so that we can stick it to the corners of our surface that we've chosen. In this case, it's the front face of the bottom tier on the left. Now, just a couple of things about working inside MapMap. If you can't see these handles, or if you can't see the crosshairs, then you want to come up here to View and just toggle on Display Controls, and then you will be able to see them. Another thing, working inside the input editor, but inside both editors, if you want to zoom in and out, you can do using the scroll wheel of your mouse, if you have a mouse that has a scroll wheel. Alternatively, you can use the plus and minus magnifying glasses just on the toolbar there of both editors. Also, MapMap has various modes that you can use to manipulate these handles and the bounding box around the video. We're in Move currently, so we're moving these handles. That can be accessed through the hotkey M. If you maybe want to scale the bounding box with the hotkey S, you can do that, or R is rotate. Alternatively, if you actually click inside the bounding box, you cycle through the different modes. So you would just click repeatedly until you're on the mode that you want. Let's start as we mean to go on by renaming our first mesh left 5, just so that we can work cleanly and we know what we're doing. Now I want to zoom right in, and I just want to make these corners as neat as they possibly can be, so we're not leaving any of the content overhanging or leaving it outside our box, but we're also not including any black borders or any slivers of the black content that we don't want. So actually, something I should have said before is that if the software hasn't automatically detected your projector when you toggle full screen and output your content, you want to come up here into View and Output Screen. You want to make sure that your projector is set to the primary output and not your laptop or computer's display. Okay, so now in the output editor, I'm going to use these handles just to move these around and make sure they're really precisely positioned on the cake. I don't want it spilling onto any of the other surface. I don't want it going over the lip of the cake, and I also don't want any light on the back wall, because that will be distracting and not what we want. Okay, so I'm happy with 5 and I'll move on to 4. So we can duplicate left 5 because it's much the same, just a rectangle box, and rename it left 4, and just zoom out so that we know what we're looking at a little bit better. So 4 is over here and it's rotated 90 degrees clockwise. So we want to rotate 5 90 degrees clockwise, and then we'll just move it over on top of 4 and simply go through the same process again of just moving these handles so that they snugly fit around the content that we want to put onto 4. Okay, so when we're happy with 4, we'll do exactly the same thing. Duplicate left 4, rename it left 3, simply move it across, tweak the handles so that they fit around tier 3, and just move those handles ever so slightly just so that they fit around content box 3, output onto the cake, and move those handles until we're happy. Now I think you get the idea, so I'll just fast forward a little bit whilst I do the 2 remaining tiers on the left side. Okay, so I'm happy with that, all on the left, so just rename this left 1. And the beauty of the content we're using, the particle cascade, is that all the content on the left can be mirrored over onto the right. So if we duplicate left and name it right 1, all we need to do is take this box here and mirror it over onto the right. Now I found the software to be a little bit funny about doing this, so I found a method that worked for me was taking these two left-hand handles and bringing them close in like this to the right-hand handles, and then I found that the remaining ones sort of pop over to the other side, and then suddenly the software is happy for you to do that. So if you try and follow my method, what I just did, I don't think you should have a problem. So there we have it, it's now reflected onto the other side, it's a mirror image. So it's exactly the same as before, you just tweak the handles except for the right hand side, and then we just move down the cake doing exactly the same as before. So there we are, each front face of each tier has its own piece of content, exactly like we wanted. So now probably what you want to do is just go in here and finely tune your handles and your mapping, just so that you're happy with it and it's as precise as you want it to be. If I was doing this on a real job, I'd really take care at this stage. I want it to look good and I don't want any stray bits of content getting onto the walls or getting onto any surfaces where they shouldn't be. So I'd really take care in this stage. I'll be fairly quick now for the purpose of this tutorial, but you really just want to go through each one and just really make sure things line up. Once that's done, you want to save your file. We don't want to lose all of our good work, so I'm happy to keep this name. I'll just save over one that I did earlier. And now all that's left to do is down here in our source is to change it back from numbered UV back to the particle cascade. So we've done that for right 5 mesh, and we just go through and do that for all the others now. Okay, that's done. So with any luck, if we play the footage and then output it into our projector, whoops, okay, we can see what we've forgotten to turn off, which is up here in view, toggle off those display controls. They were useful before, but now we don't want to see them anymore. Play our content, and there it is on our cake, looking beautiful. So congratulations, you've mapped a cake. This content is looped, so it will just go round and round until you want to turn it off. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and like this video. Have fun and happy cake mapping.